Good day, everyone. Welcome to this HAQAA2 webinar. My name is Elizabeth Colucci. I would just like to make a few technical instructions for you before passing it over to our welcome speakers and eventually to our chair and to our panel. We have interpretation available in 3 languages today: English, French, and Portuguese, 3 of the 4 official languages of the African Union. You will see the interpretation icon in the bottom of your screen, which is a little globe. Please select your language there. Please note that the chat is deactivated, but the question and answer icon is activated. So you will see an icon that says Q&A. Please put all of your questions, your comments, your ideas in that Q&A section. You can make those comments and questions throughout the webinar. We will be monitoring that, and at various points in time, summarizing those questions for the panelists so that they can address them. So please do share all of your questions in any language that you wish to share them in, preferably in the 3 languages that we are working in today to make it a bit easier for our team. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our colleague who is with us here today from the African Union Commission, Emmanuel Chigosi. Emmanuel is the Higher Education and AU-EU Education Initiatives focal point, and he has been supporting many of the initiatives that you will learn about in today's webinar. So Emmanuel, I give you the floor for your opening words.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. The chair of this webinar, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and pleasure to bring you warm greetings from the African Union Commission on behalf of the Acting Head of Education Division at the Department of Education, Science and Technology. I would like to first congratulate the organizer, that is Obriel Global, for bringing together relevant stakeholders, policymakers for this important webinar themed Africa and EU in Strategic Partnership, with the pertinent question on what is new in higher education. And of course, also for their work across the higher education spectrum and their concerted efforts at assuring quality assurance, at assuring quality in higher education and building capacities. The African Union Agenda 2063, which is the strategic framework for the socio-economic transformation of the continent for the next 4 decades, builds on and seeks to accelerate the implementation of past and existing continental initiative for growth and sustainable development. The development of higher education is seen as a prime mover in the Agenda 2063's quest for an education and skills revolution for achieving an integrated, peaceful and prosperous Africa, which is unpacked in the Continental Education Strategy for Africa, CESA 1625. The strategy is in line with the Common African Position on the post-2015 Development Agenda. The Agenda 2063 further affirms that Africa's human capital will be fully developed as its most precious resources through sustained investment in higher education, science, technology, research, and innovation. Access to postgraduate education will be expanded and strengthened to ensure world-class infrastructure for learning and research and support scientific reforms that underpins the transformation of the continent. And as such, policy-level response targeted at strengthening higher education institutions on the continent, as well as authorities, higher education authorities in member states in terms of digitalization, online learning, skills-focused learning to meet the 21st century need are top of the priorities of the African Union Commission. It is in the pursuit of the vision of an integrated Africa that we at the African Union Commission has embarked on developing strategies for harmonization in higher education on the continent in order to foster cooperation in information exchange, in order to ensure harmonization of procedures and policies, and attainment of comparability of qualifications, in order to facilitate mobility of Africans across the continent. Investing in education and skills is a key focus of the African Union Commission. The importance of higher education to build skills and create jobs is underlined in this key area. You will agree with me that it is imperative that collaborative processes of reviewing and modernizing competence, skills, and making curricula and teaching more relevant to the needs of African society and the labor market are adopted. On AU digital transformation strategy. The AU is currently in the process of developing a digital transformation strategy that will focus more on higher education. The digital transformation strategy is recognized as a driving force for innovative, inclusive, and sustainable growth in Africa. Digitization and innovations are transforming ecosystems by creating jobs and reducing poverty and inequalities, facilitating the delivery of goods and services, promoting education and skills development, and contributing to the achievement of the AU's Agenda 2063. The aim of the digital education strategy is to transform Africa's education to improve access, inclusion, to improve on quality and relevance of education and learning, to make a meaningful and substantive contribution to the development of the continent. The strategy will, among others, aim to address key bottlenecks in adopting and scaling up the digitization of Africa's higher education landscape, including issues relating to connectivity, content pedagogy, cost of data, access to device and teaching, management and maintenance of capacities. It will also explore the use of no-tech, low-tech, high-tech methods in different contexts. Ladies and gentlemen, without wasting much of our time, I want to seize this opportunity to once again thank the partnership and the initiatives, the HAQAA initiative team for leading this process and ensuring that we have these conversations. I'd like to also reassure that we continue to support the AUC's commitment is second to none in this process. I wish us a fruitful and meaningful conversation. Thank you for your attention. Over to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for this very enriching overview of some of the African Union's current priorities in the education sector and also specifically in the higher education sector. It's an ambitious vision. And indeed, the purpose of this webinar today is to talk more about how the African Union and the European Union can work in partnership to achieve some of these goals. I would like now to give the floor to Ramon Torrent, who is the president of Obriel Global Observatory, which is the coordinating partner of the HAQAA2 implementing team. You will learn more about HAQAA2 throughout the course of this webinar, as we have many other partners and participants involved in it. But for now, I would like Ramon to inspire us with a few opening words. Ramon.
Merci. Bonjour. Mes mots de bienvenue sont bien.
My
welcome words are less important than what we are going to be hearing from the Commission of the African Union. So I am going to concentrate on three aspects. I will try to make my expo in the most summarized way that is possible. First of all, as part of this dialogue, South-South-North, that we are trying to promote from the standpoint of Obriel Global, we are trying to bring together or to weave intercontinental relationships between the subcontinent of India, that is Asia, Africa, Latin America, the Caribbean, and Europe. If you take a look at this in a map, you will see that Africa is not in the periphery of this dialogue. Rather, it is at the very center. Around Africa, we have India, the European Union, and Latin America and the Caribbean. We are trying to address this dialogue and to have as main players, not just the universities. There are too many universities and they are very different. We cannot have access to absolutely all of them. And we would not only have the government as a player or the different organizations or NGOs. That would be too much for us. We are a modest organization, but rather we are addressing intermediary organizations, the middlemen, so to speak, between universities and political authorities. By this, I mean university associations and quality agencies. It is not by chance that the participants of our webinar of today come from this milieu of intermediate organizations. Thirdly, we are trying to do this not in an abstract way, but rather on the basis of concrete projects that will anchor us in reality. And of course, these projects are projects that are funded by the EU, and we wish to express our gratitude to the European Union for having given us the means to try and go ahead with this intercontinental dialogue and the access that it has enabled us to intermediate organizations. That is why we wish to thank the European Union, the European Commission more particularly, Nora, and among others in particular. So, well, that's about it. I'm sure that this is going to be a fruitful webinar, and it will also be a kicking point for future activities.
Okay, thank you so much, Ramon. Without further ado, I would like to start by doing a quick poll of our audience. I see we are now over 100 participants and the number is climbing. We want to get a sense of who you are and why you're here with us today. So I'm going to put up two poll questions. If you could respond to those quickly, I will read them out so that the interpreters can also translate those questions for you. And from there, we'll go into our panel. Okay, so the first question is, which region do you come from? As you know, this webinar is being broadcast all over the world. We're interested not just in promoting this dialogue within and across Africa, but also to other regions as well that have a strong interest in collaborating with Africa. So we want to know where you're from. The first option is Southern Africa or SADC. The second option is East Africa, Central Africa, West Africa, Northern Africa, Middle East, Europe, Latin America and the Caribbean, Asia, and other. So please select on your screen which region you are from. Okay. Give you a few more seconds with that. And then there is a second question. Okay. Okay, the second question is, please select the response that best describes your interest in this webinar. 1, I am involved in an initiative that is supported by the Africa-EU Strategic Partnership and want to learn more about the policy framework. Second option, I am curious as to what the Africa-EU Strategic Partnership is and how I can benefit. And third option, I am familiar with the initiatives being presented in this webinar, but want to enhance my knowledge and understand how they relate. If you could select one option, we'll give you about 15 more seconds.
Elizabeth, the second question is not on the screen. Can you just check, please?
If you scroll down, you should be able to see it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I am now sharing the results. So we have a very good representation today from Southern Africa. Wonderful to have you on board, 24%. Eastern Africa, 6%. Central Africa, 4%. Western Africa, 6%. Europe, 37%, which is in the majority. And Latin America and the Caribbean, 20%, which is very interesting. Welcome, colleagues from Latin America. I have a strong feeling many of you might be from Brazil because we are offering this in Portuguese, and we've also promoted this some through our networks and partners in Brazil. So welcome. And then other 4%. So that's a bit the profile here today. In terms of the second question, the majority of you, almost 60%, are curious as to what the Africa-EU Strategic Partnership is and how you can benefit from it. And then sort of equal number of responses for the other two answers. Very good. So with that in mind, I would like to hand the floor now over to Deirdre Lennon, who will be chairing this event. Deirdre works for the European Commission in the Directorate of Education and Culture. She works for the unit that manages the international cooperation of the education, primarily the education portfolio. She, for those of you who know her, has been a tremendous advocate for higher education cooperation and harmonization in Africa, and oversees many of the initiatives that will be discussed here today. So Deirdre, the floor is yours to take it forward with our opening speaker and our panelists.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining this webinar, and I'm really pleased to see that we have a good group of people who are curious to learn more about the partnership between Africa and Europe. Our first speaker today is going to look at the role of higher education in the Africa-EU Strategic Partnership, and is my colleague, in fact, Eleonora Martinello. She's Italian, studied in Padova, History of Arts, done European and International Studies in Brussels and Gender in Jerusalem. She's been working for 20 years in human development, both in Italian and European public administration, and for the past 10 years was in Jerusalem and Accra, so knows Africa, and then returned to headquarters where she's responsible for regional programs for Africa in the sector of education and skills. Eleonora, I'll pass the floor to you. You have approximately 20 minutes. Thank you. Microphone, you just need to put your, Put your microphone on. Is it working?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, good. So thanks for the presentation and also for the nice words. And also I take the opportunity to thank you because I'm new in this new, adventure of the education at headquarters, and I closely work with you in the last 2 months. So, and I really learned a lot from your experience. It's a pleasure for me to be here today and represent the Directorate of International Partnership. I will take the floor on behalf of Mr. Hans Stausbaum, the head of unit of the regional and multi-country programs for Africa from DG INTPA, European Commission, because unfortunately was unable to attend the meeting. I take also the opportunity to greet the African Union Commission, thanking for the close cooperation and common engagement on EU-AU political priorities, DG HAQAA for the close and continuous cooperation, Obriel for successfully managing the program, and all the African and European panelists and participants from around the world taking part to this webinar. So your participation is an evidence of the commitment of higher education in the development of higher education research in Africa, as well as a model for South-South-North cooperation in the sector. So I will start my presentation introducing also my directorate and the role of INTPA in this program and in the EU external action. So INTPA is the DG, the General Directorate in the European Commission, responsible for development and cooperation in the world. So is therefore responsible for setting priorities and funding for programs as HAQAA, in close cooperation with the African Union Commission and DG HAQAA all along the process. So as a key recent policy development, in December 2019, Ms. Jutta Urpilainen became the first Commissioner for International Relationship. And in January 2021, from DG DevCo, that maybe is more familiar to you, so we changed name and we became DG INTPA. So this new name INTPA better reflects also our mission and our way to engaging with the rest of the world. So our mandate remains the same, to promote the EU values, principle, and interest in today's world, build partnership, this will be now the new keyword, on an equal footing around common priorities, such as climate change, environmental sustainability, digital transition, growth and jobs, good governance, peace, security, and human development. In this framework, the cooperation with Africa is a high priority. Africa is a strategic partner for the European Union. And the Africa-EU partnership is the formal political channel through which the European Union and the Africa continent work together, engage in political and policy dialogues, and define their cooperative relationship. In this framework, the summits of heads of states and governments take place traditionally every 3 years, alternately in Africa and in Europe. These summits take stock of the progress made in the implementation of commitments and provide political guidance for future work. Following this framework and calendar, in view of the summit scheduled last year in March 2020, but which has been postponed due to pandemic, the EU has adopted the communication toward a comprehensive strategy with Africa. This communication is in line with the common priorities set up by the European Union and the African Union at the 2017 summit in Abidjan, and reflected also the new EU's proposal in view of a new joint Africa-EU strategy. Despite the postponement now, so the date is still to under definition, of course, for the pandemic. All 2020 has been a very busy year for the EU-Africa partnership. As part of the EU global response to the pandemic, Team Europe initiatives, a joint European Union plus the 27 member states, last year mobilized around 38 billion to support partner countries in responding to COVID, and at least of 8 million of the overall envelope were for Sub-Saharan Africa. Also in this context, funding from the research program Horizon 2020 So supported research on coronavirus and capacity of research in sub-Saharan Africa with 25 million of euros. At the end, in October 2020, the European Council conclusion called for a comprehensive multi-sector, multi-level, and multi-stakeholders investment program, aiming at boosting public and private investment to create sustainable growth and jobs for Africa's growing youth population. So the EC services are currently working on this investment package to all the activities related to the leading to the 2022 EU Summit. Regarding education, so digital knowledge economy, as well as education, will be among of the priority areas of intervention. And youth, gender, education, skills, science and innovation, and the creation of attractive investment climate and business environment will be major cross-cutting themes of this package that is now under preparation. So coming back to the strategy, what we mentioned before, the new EU strategy adopted last year, because this is a key reference document for the preparation of the future EU programming, covering the multi-annual financial framework for the years 2021-2027. So under this strategic partnership, under a specific strategic partnership for sustainable growth and jobs, the EU proposed a significantly step up efforts in education, skills, research and innovation. So we know that the education and skills is a key priority in EU partnership. On this basis, through the new financial instrument INDICI, meaning Neighborhood Development International Cooperation Instrument, which include all the previous financial instruments, including the European funds, European Development Fund. So the funding for education will be increased from 7% to 10%, making education one of the top priorities for the next programming. With a view to creating a knowledge society and economy and contribute also to the regional integration in Africa through education, the new programs for education will cover bilateral, regional, and continental interventions. The EU is planning to scale up also the EU-Africa academic and scientific cooperation, notably by increasing the allocation, significantly increasing the allocation dedicated to sub-Saharan African countries in the next Erasmus Plus program, and also in the future skills and higher education intervention. From the regional and continental perspectives, the programs which have been implemented in 2015-2020 and they are still ongoing as Erasmus Plus, the Intra-Africa Academic Mobility Scheme, Harmonization and Tuning, the African Continental Qualification Framework, the VET Pilot Mobility Initiative, the African Student Alumni Forum, and of course this program, build the base of the new programming. Regarding these specific projects, as a final remark, from the INTBA side, I can underline the great interest of the results of this project, which is in line with the EU priorities of the future programming on education and investment research, and as well as within the South-South-North cooperation. Thanks a lot for your work in this project, which is a very inspirational project for us. And over to you. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Leonarda. I think that's very reassuring news. I mean, everybody who is here today considers that education, skills and knowledge economy are at the core of sustainable development, and to hear the importance that the European Commission or the EU as a whole with its member states are putting in this sector is excellent news, I think, for our partner countries, partner organizations. Thank you very much. We're going to move to our panel. And the panel was brought together by the colleagues of Obriel, mainly to illustrate the work on regional harmonization, bringing in together the different voices, the different perspectives. And I'm going to start off just introducing our panel members. And then after that, each of the members is going to give an opening statement. And then we will follow that with questions and answers. And I'll be looking with the support of the colleagues, the organizers, looking at your questions and answers throughout this session. So please don't hesitate to pick up any things that are said that you're particularly interested in or want to hear more about, and we'll try to address them. In no particular order, just to follow the program, our first panel member is Abdou Cissé, who's the Administrative and Technical Coordinator at the National Quality Assurance Authority for Higher Education in Senegal, HAQAA2, sorry, in Senegal, which was one of the first agencies set up in 2012, one of the first agencies to be set up in a French-speaking country in Africa. The organization has been instrumental in supporting both HAQAA, but quality assurance on the continent, sharing expertise with other countries, and not only helping HAQAA, but also, I think, actually volunteering to go through the quality assurance processes themselves. So that's always been particularly important, I think. Following that, we will hear from James Joey from the Eastern African community. He's in charge of the educational programs there. So he works on the mutual recognition of qualifications, student and staff mobility programs, regional quality assurance frameworks. He's also very much engaged in the work of the African Continental's qualifications framework, and was the former executive director of the African Network for the Internationalization of Education. Felix Kwabena Donko is an alumnus of the Erasmus Mundus Joint European Masters programs. Studied in Germany, Denmark, and Portugal, and is now undertaking a research associate at the University of South Africa in Johannesburg. He's been the president of the Erasmus Mundus Alumni Association, the president of the African chapter, and is one of the co-founders of the new African Students and Alumni Forum. He's been actively involved in HAQAA and in the Tuning Africa initiative. Jeffy Mukora is the executive director responsible for external assessment at the National Council for Quality Assurance and Accreditation, CNAC, here I've got it, sorry, in Mozambique. He is one of the core members of the team that developed the African standards and guidelines for quality assurance in higher education. He works with the African quality rating mechanism, has also undertaken review visits in partner countries in the context of the activities of the program. I'm going to start by inviting Abdou Cissé to present his opening remarks to the webinar participants. Thank you. Abdou, you have 5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup.
Vous avez.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers and all of those responsible for this event. And I would also like to convey the congratulations of the Executive Secretary for the organization of this event as well. And I would like to make a brief presentation on HAQAA2 and its participation in the development of quality assurance in Africa. As you very well know, HAQAA2 was created within a context of reform of the higher education system in Senegal. We had certain fundamental steps that were part of this process of opening higher education and research in Senegal and opening it up to the world. Yes, the internationalization of higher education and certain strategic points of the process that I will describe now. Within this process of internationalization, it was accompanied by a high number of students in Senegal, and this involved different aspects and different reforms, including pedagogical reforms and governance. And HAQAA2 within this process was created. This was created as an organization as other stakeholders, of course, governments and establishments of higher educations, professionals, and the communities. It was invited to participate in the process to attain these goals within the context of higher education. And we translated all of these issues into our strategy. The strategy is what I will describe, and it's something that we will be referring to several times. But these are some of the pieces of information. It was created in 2012, like I said at the beginning, as an agency dedicated to higher education. And in 2018, it was only in 2018 that is extended to innovation and research. So it enlarges missions. The objectives put quality assurance at the service of external quality assurance, was at the service of internal quality assurance. This improved governance within the establishments of higher education. Also, quality assurance as the main pillar of the development of the culture of evaluation. And all of the establishments engaged in a process of quality assurance, which in the end improved quality as a whole, and of course allowed the different stakeholders and different participants, they had allowed them to access and enjoy, of course, a higher level of quality in general at the level of higher education and research. In order to achieve this, we developed several procedures or several steps. The most important ones are the ones that are being implemented now, and others are in process. It's institutional evaluation, it's the process to evaluate programs, and the evaluation of doctoral schools, as well as evaluation of the research process. Just for you to understand what the discussions revolved around within the higher education in Senegal, we have public universities, and one of them offers distance education. We have polytechnical schools. We have a network of higher education institutes that focus like on professions and different skills, and other private institutions. So this is a little bit the description of what happens in Senegal with the public universities, the virtual universities, and the others I just described. The interactions at the regional level and continental level have to do with this national strategy of internationalization of higher education. In order to achieve this, Senegal developed 6 modalities of intervention and also interaction at the regional and continental level. First of all, it was the partnership with the ministries that are in the process of implementing within their states and within their agencies similar processes. These are some of the countries with which we work and we continue to work: Burkina Faso, Niger, and others, the ones you can see on the screen. At the regional and continental level, that we also engaged in a partnership with African agencies that were already established and within our space, both because of sharing language or similar goals in a similar region in Africa, in near regions in Africa. One of the examples is the agencies in Gambia, in Guinea, in Mali, and others. So in terms of the interventions, it's important to establish what the results are. So in agencies, Francophone agencies of quality assurance, this is important, and also other elements as well. Within the different modalities with which we have developed and engaged in this regional and sub-regional cooperation was through the participation in initiatives developed by technical and financial partners that are involved in higher education. IFGU, for example, which is for AUF, which is for Francophone universities, and UNESCO, BM, and ICESO. Another important participation in the development of different spaces was our participation in academic and economic forums. Through this, we were able to develop tools and mechanisms for integration of higher education in these spaces. And finally is our participation in projects, specific projects and initiatives that are being developed at the African level, and all of the initiatives of the African and European unions are here. Here I only included one of the examples of UNESCO Shenzhen, of which we are members. We participate in this project, and it focuses on qualifications at the African level. We have participated in the development of some of these initiatives, and the goal is to share our modest experience in the Francophone context, but also to be able to benefit from the experience of the other sub-regions. And for HAQAA2 particularly, we are a strategic partner which participates at all levels within the development of the project. This involves the political level, the development of goals, the development of tools, quality assurance, and also at the level of all of the technical work that is done by us to make available instruments that have to do with higher educations, and in order to facilitate as well the appropriation of these tools by other stakeholders. We are also stakeholders in projects that have to do with the HAQAA2, and we were chosen as one of the countries covered by this assessment study, and we are members of the board as well. And we also participated in the development and creation of regulatory instruments such as the Addis Ababa Convention. And I will also mention tuning as one of the initiatives, and the idea is to support the development of quality assurance, higher education, and research in the African context. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abdul. Thank you very much. We'll come back after with some questions. James Jowie, I'd like to pass the floor to you. So James Jowie from the East Africa community. Thank you very much. 5 minutes or so.
Thank you so much, Deidre. And I join the other colleagues in appreciating this opportunity to be part of this webinar. I'll say very brief remarks on behalf of the East African community. The East African community is one of the regional economic communities of the African continent, and it comprises Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, and South Sudan. And these countries have committed and come together to undertake a number of pursuits, but I'll concentrate only on education and training and science and technology, in which the partner states have committed to cooperate together, to work together cooperatively in education, science and technology, and other aspects of human resource development. And in these, a number of undertakings have been made, including the harmonization of the education systems of the partner states, which has been done at the different cycles, and more importantly, at the higher education level, and which culminated into the region being declared a common higher education area in the year 2016. And this has been a result of a number of regional frameworks which have been developed by the East African community, some of them on quality assurance issues, some on mutual recognition of qualifications, both academic and professional, and also the mobility programs for both staff, students, and other aspects of labor that we have also developed. And these are partly also to implement our common market protocol that allows and fosters mobility of people, and more so for us in education, the mobility of professionals, the mobility of academics, and the mobility of students. In joint or cooperative development of human resources in areas where we have deficits, the community has come up with centers of excellence in very strategically selected areas where we have deficiencies. And these centers of excellence are located in the different partner states and supported by different partners, largely by the partners from Europe, and that one concretizes the Africa or the East Africa EU cooperation. A number of them funded actually with support from the European Union. And in addition to that, we've participated very centrally in the continental processes. We work very closely with the African Union. As early as yesterday, we were joining the African Union in a TVET program which was being launched between African Union as the REX and UNESCO. And we also cascade these continental initiatives at the regional levels. In the programs, the HAQAA2 and the HAQAA project, the EAC is participating very centrally. We participated in the studies. We are in several committees, and we participated in the meeting since the beginning till now. And that is very crucial for ownership, especially within our political and policy processes in the region. And we continue to look forward to the next stages of these developments. I think I'll talk about some of the key or the detailed aspects of developments in education within the East African Community region with respect to the theme of today in the next set of questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, James. I'm going to pass the floor to Felix now, Felix Kwabena. You'll be coming from a different perspective. May we have your opening remarks now? Thank you, Felix. It's lovely to see you.
Thank you very much, Riri. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I want to say a very big thank you to all the organizers, and thank you, participants and audiences, for being here today. So my name is Felix, and I'm speaking on behalf of I'm a member of the African Students and Alumni Forum. I want to say that we have been observing some of the challenges which is affecting the ambition of education as a right, and education in terms of a lifelong learning approach for people on the continent. And we've realized that the COVID-19 has kind of exacerbated the education fortunes of young people on the continent. In recent times, when you look at the news, you see there's been situations where young people in school are being kidnapped. We've had situations where upon a disaster, the education infrastructure is totally destroyed. These activities have all been now cascaded and now been put on a larger scale by the prevailing pandemic. And we are looking at options that can help us to mitigate their impacts in the long term, including hybrid education, improving the opportunities for technology and remote learning in rural communities. In our observation on the educational terrain, we realized that the interruption of education in many schools on the continent has led to a situation where many young girls have been forced out of education. Many have been married off. A study by UNESCO showed that there is a 65% probability of more increase in teenage pregnancies. And these are issues that we are looking at in the post-COVID era. We also realized that this challenge with COVID-19 has also provided a unique opportunity to look at the modes of education delivery, as well as the contents of education. So issues such as education for sustainable development, which was gaining traction, has now become an urgent issue because we realize that the behavior of people is a fundamental aspect in the issue of sustainability. And education is one area which provides opportunity to promote sustainable behavior. So the contents of education now embedding more of sustainability issues and climate change that will make all of us responsible citizens on this planet. And I will delve more into this as we go on in the next section. I hope I've stayed within my 5 minutes.
Perfect, perfect timing. Thank you very much. And the last member of our panel is Jeffy Makora from Mozambique. Jeffy, would you please give your opening statement? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Deidre. And I would like also to join others by thanking Obriel Global for organizing the webinar, and also thanking the European Union Commission, the African Union Commission for supporting the development of Africa. I am going to take my 5 minutes talking about HAQAA2, which is the Quality Council for Assessment, Accreditation, and Quality Assurance in Higher Education. Next slide, please. This council was established in 2007, legally established, and it is the implementing and supervisory agents for SNACIS, which is our National Higher Education Assessment, Accreditation, and Quality Assurance System, and also our Higher Education Qualifications Framework. So the HAQAA2 is responsible both for the quality assurance and also for development of higher education qualifications. And this agency has got a technical and administrative autonomy. I can say that it is an independent quality assurance agency, although we still depend heavily on government funding. And the agency is under the guardianship of the minister who oversees the area of higher education. And this is the Minister of Science, Technology, and Higher Education. And the principles which are governing the agency are credibility, transparency, autonomy, exemption, dynamism, and authority. And this agency has got a specific deliberative and regulatory functions, ensuring the harmony, cohesion, and credibility of the system of quality assurance and the qualifications, and that will also allow the monitoring of higher education quality is monitored in higher education. Next slide, please. And the vision and the mission of HAQAA2, the mission is to promote the evaluation, accreditation, development, and registration of higher education qualifications as mechanisms of quality assurance in view of the country's development needs and in line with the quality standards of higher education in the country, the region, and the world. And our vision is to be a reference institution in the field of assessment, accreditation, development, and registration of higher education qualifications at national, regional, and international levels. Next slide, please. And the participation of HAQAA2 in various international events. HAQAA2 is heavily involved at the regional level. Is currently the chair of the SADC Technical Committee on Certification and Accreditation, TCCA. It is because that the country has got the president of the SADC at the moment. So by virtue of that, HAQAA2 is chairing the TCCA. And also HAQAA2 is a member of the SADC Qualifications Verification Network, and also has been recently elected as the current president of the African Quality Assurance Network, which is AFRIQUAN. And also HAQAA2 is a focal point of Mozambique, the informal working group for the Addis Ababa Convention. And also, HAQAA is a strategic partner for the implementation of the HAQAA2, which the organizers of this webinar, and also sits in the as an advisory board member of the African Continental Qualification Framework and the HAQAA2 as well, and also is currently the chair of the further development of the African Standards and Guidelines for Quality Assurance. That is the task force, which is spearheading further development of the ASGQA, and also participates as an expert in the task force for the development of the African Continental Qualification Frameworks. So this is in brief what HAQAA is all about, and I think I thank you for that.
Thank you, Jeffy. I'm going to stay with you because for participants, I think HAQAA, one of its main objectives was to support the Pan-African Quality Assurance and Accreditation Framework, which was developed by the African Union to support harmonization, mobility, accreditation, movement across the continent. Obviously, it also enhances movement with Europe, exchange with Europe, and that's why this initiative is so important in the partnership between Africa and Europe. Could you perhaps briefly explain to participants the main action lines of the Pan-African Quality Assurance Framework and how you, your work in HAQAA and also in the development of the African Continental Qualifications Framework has been particularly relevant for enhancing and improving, the relevance of what you're doing in Mozambique?
Okay, once again, thank you, Deidre. As we have already indicated, the Pan-African Quality Assurance and Accreditation Framework, the HAQAA, is the African Union's overriding framework to build an integrated continent through a harmonized education system, where, as we have said, intra-African mobility and skills portability are very essential. And a number of tools and action lines are being developed or have been developed, tested and implemented by African stakeholder organization, with, of course, as we have already said, with the support of the European Union through initiatives such as the HAQAA, harmonization of higher education, quality assurance and accreditation, Tuning Africa, CIFA, and other organizations like UNESCO. And what are the main action lines of HAQAA? Just in brief, it is to facilitate collaboration and networking between national and regional quality assurance and accreditation agencies, initiate organizational setup and legal framework of a continental accreditation agency, and also initiate or further developing African standards and guidelines for quality assurance, and also advance the development of an African accreditation, a credit transfer system, and also initiate the development of an African continental qualification frameworks based on existing national and regional qualification frameworks. And in terms of, these are the action lines of HAQAA, just to mention in brief. And the tools which have been developed under HAQAA, they include the African Standards and Guidelines for Quality Assurance, the ASG, which is being overseen by HAQAA. AQRM for Institutional Development is also overseen by HAQAA. Capacity building, trainings and quality assurance for national quality assurance agencies, also overseen by HAQAA. Another development tool, which is the African Continental Qualification Framework, which is being developed at the moment. This is a responsibility for CIFA, Skills Initiative for Africa. And also we have the African Credit Accumulation and Transfer System, which is the Tuning, the Africa, and the Addis Convention, which is being spearheaded by UNESCO. And lastly is the Pan-African Quality Assurance and Accreditation Agency, which is also being spearheaded by HAQAA, which is under development at the moment. And as we have said, my participation, I've actually participated in all the three action areas lines which are HAQAA2 is the African standards and guidelines for quality assurance. I participated as a member of the working group, and now as a chair of advancing the development of the ASG, and also participated in the AQRM for institutional evaluation, and also participated in the training for capacity building for quality assurance agencies. And at the same time, I'm also involved in the African Continental Qualification Framework as one of the experts, which are, and this all, it gives us the opportunity to change the way we are developing our quality assurance system in Mozambique. We have participated as an agent in the agents reviews, and that helped us to improve where we're not doing very well, and also to rethink how we can improve our quality assurance system. And I can say that because of the experience of the ASG, we are the first country in Africa to implement the external assessment online. I can say that we have managed to use the guidelines for open and distance learning to spearhead this online quality assurance system through the digitalization of evidence, this digitalization of virtual visits and all that. And we've managed to accredit, to evaluate more than 100 programs using online platforms during this pandemic. So I think this is I can say a big takeaway from the experience of working with these harmonization processes. We've learned quite a lot, and it will help us to think and see what can be done, not to stop the pandemic being a challenge to us, but we use that challenge to create opportunities to do things in a different way. Thank you, Deidre.
Thank you. I wonder when you sleep at all with everything. That's incredible. Thank you. Abdou, I'd pretty much ask the same question to you for Senegal. You know, how do you feel that the country, you know, have you benefited from the participation of HAQAA2 in these harmonization initiatives? And why is it so important for Senegal, you know, to join or to spearhead these developments in Africa itself as a continent, but with Europe as a partner?
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. HAQAA2 has participated in this initiative, HAQAA, in the first phase of its development and also in its second phase. For us, it is extremely important to have this participation because it enables offering to ANAC a platform for dialogue, for technical as well as political dialogue together with the other subregions, with the other systems of higher education and quality assurance. This is something very important, and also taking steps for putting together and designing these ASGs, these guidelines and lines of reference. This has enabled us to see something that we already had in a reflective way, but this process has allowed us to make progress and benefit from this design. HAQAA2 has a steering committee or a consulting committee, and we also belonged to the technical group that considers or studies the viability of the implementation of the Continental Agency for Evaluation together with other experts. We also belong to a task force which puts together the tools that go hand in hand with the appropriation and the correct and relevant implementation of these ASGs. This is what we are currently putting together in order to facilitate the implementation of these ASGs. HAQAA2 has also been the candidate for the pilot evaluation. And this pilot evaluation of agencies has allowed us for the first time, because it's the first experience after 5 years of having the agency running. This will allow us to know what is happening inside the agency. We have a certain amount of experience with regards to quality assurance in-house and external quality assurance, but with regards to internal quality assurance in the agencies, this is the first occasion that we are having to find guidelines to find out how we are really running, and this will allow us to assess our practices in light of these standards. And it also will allow us to receive recommendations. This has enabled ANACSUP to have a new plan for 2025, and this is very important as part of the new strategic orientations for ANACSUP. So I would just like to say that this project is an opportunity so as to be able to ensure external quality assurance as well as internal quality assurance of the various institutions, but it also enables us to favor innovation within ANACSUP because several actions have been carried out within ANACSUP as a result of this evaluation and global participation in this project. There is also training offered by DAD, and Senegal also participates in this as a forum for sharing its modest experience. So it is really an occasion for dialogue among the various subregions. And it is a tool, an instrument for integration and for the construction of a shared space for higher education and quality assurance, despite our differences contextually, historically, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Abdul. I think both agencies have really used the opportunity of HAQAA and at least the standards and guidelines to advance their own reviews and agency work, which is extremely good. Felix, you and I were in Abidjan, remember, in 2017 when we brought together the students and alumni together in a structural dialogue. And I remember that one of the recurring statements that came from the young people was integration, continental integration. They wanted to be able to move around Africa, and they wanted to have a voice in the political discussions. And I think that was quite clear then. And in Europe, at least, the students have a voice in the integration agenda. And I was wondering, what are your thoughts on the possible role that the African Students and Alumni Forum could have for this kind of debate on the African continent?
Thank you very much for this question. I think such questions have even become more urgent. If you look at what happens recently concerning the Arab Spring, they've been on the anniversary of the Arab Spring, such issues came back again. And then in recent times, when we've had challenges in the Sahel region, such issues have equally been catapulted. So one of the areas we can help young people is, as you mentioned, is to give them a voice. If you give them a voice, then that edge to take up arms or be end up in the arms of extremist groups is limited or becomes mitigated. To help young people to give them a voice, we have to provide opportunities for them to engage with policymakers at summits. Aside that, provide opportunities for young people to meet together and also deliberate on the issues which concern them. So the issues which concern them, meeting together, talking about the issues which concern them from their perspective, gives them the opportunity to address such issues from a bottom-up approach. This can then be escalated to policymakers, etc. Then going further, young people also be given the opportunity to implement such whatever measures are related to them, involving them in the implementation and decision-making processes is what is very important in this direction, because then what really affects them, you know, the issues becomes more tailored. The interventions are more tailored to the needs of young people. And so you've raised a very important issue, which in ASAP, we've had some workshops with our colleagues like the Pan-African Students Union, their alumni. We've had programs with ASU as well, trying to deal with such issues on the horizontal level, on a peer-to-peer level, addressing some of the issues on the continent affecting young people in terms of policy making, and then giving them a voice on the continent. When it comes to the mobility issues and being able to move around, it's also important to us because we see education as a platform for integration. If you look at the Agenda 2063, it talks about improved integration on the continent, and education spaces are very important in that regard, because then young people meet each other, they form friendships which will last a lifetime, you know, friendships which will last a lifetime through educational spaces. When they move from one country to another, they know each other, they form relationships, they know more about their own continent. Most often, it happens that when young people travel outside the continent, that's when they get to meet their friends from other countries on the education spaces, and they meet them on education spaces. So now we are trying to turn it around, use education spaces as opportunities for them to form such relationships and nurture that kind of networks on the continent.
Thank you, Felix. James, you're representing a regional economic community, and the East African community, I'd say, has a very consolidated and strong higher education area. How do you perceive sort of the Africa-EU partnerships at the continental dimension, and you know, where's East Africa's sort of added value to this conversation? Where do you place yourself, so to say, as in the work that we're doing under this partnership?
Yeah, thank you so much once again. And I would like to begin from the position that regional economic communities are very vital in such kind of initiatives, especially noting the diversity of the African continent in different perspectives. And such economic communities make it quite easy to make follow-ups, to make their alignments with the continental initiatives. They give more opportunities for better coordination. They gave more opportunities for aligning the processes at the regional level to the processes at the continental level. And I think they can overall then play a key role in the overall attainment of the continental initiatives. And referring back to the East African community where I'm based, we therefore, based on a common history, relatively common culture, which makes it easy for us as a region to cooperate. We have already undertaken a lot of processes and achievements in collaborations in education. And we take education as a very strategic tool for regional integration and to foster our other processes, including achieving our goals in the other areas in which we are cooperating. So education is quite key. And I think this is the same for the continent, and this allows us to loop into the other continental initiatives that the African Union has, and we are really playing quite a pivotal role. And I think the African Union can also count on the regional economic communities as very important building blocks for coordinating and achieving the continental initiatives. I convene the meetings of the ministers of education for this region, and this is a very important policy platform where the ministers of the countries can report together on how they are not only performing with regard to our own education goals, but also to the continental and even the global educational goals. And so for the EAC, we've been really critical players at the continental level. As I mentioned at the onset, we actually participate in most of these initiatives, including the ones that we are specifically discussing today. And not only because we should, but because we derive a lot of importance in them, also in what we do as a community. So quite a number of the goals that we pursue in education, human resource development are tied to the continental goals. When you look at the aspirations of CESA 2016-2025, they are very key. We've just developed our 6th development strategy of the EAC, and we drew a lot from the continental and even the global goals and integrated these into our regional goals. And so this is just to underpin the role of regional organizations, not only to achieve our own goals of regional integration as a region, but also the continental and even some of the global goals that drift to education. Thank you.
Thank you, James. It's really a two-way street, huh? It's going in both directions. Thank you. Elizabeth, may I ask you perhaps if we've got questions from the public? Maybe now would be a good moment to take them.
Thank you, Deirdre. Yes, there have been some questions posted. I tried to group them a bit. I'm going to summarize them, and then perhaps you could guide the panelists in responding as appropriate. One, actually two questions had to do more with institutional cooperation. We've talked a lot about capacity building of quality assurance agencies. Both Abdu and Jeffy represent national quality assurance agencies. And many actions under the HAQAA initiative support that, as we heard. But one question that came actually from colleagues from Georgia, quite nice, welcome colleagues from Georgia, is what are the main challenges in cooperation between African and European higher education institutions, whether it be related to language or skills or staff capacity, and what are strategies to address this in the framework of the Africa-EU partnership? And then more specifically, a question from Mozambique, what are there specific opportunities for inter-university cooperation under HAQAA2? So beyond just the level of agencies working with each other across the continent, are there opportunities for universities to work together under this initiative? We had a question that went to Eleonora that had to do with the role of NGOs in the Africa-EU partnership, particularly related to the higher education sector. So how are NGOs seen in this partnership? How can they benefit? What roles do they play? And finally, a question to Jeffy, having to do with the benchmarking of PhD programs in Mozambique against international and African standards, and whether this is being done, and if so, is it helping to make such programs more internationally attractive? So sort of three sets of questions.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Perhaps Jeffy, you could take the PhD programs to start with, and then perhaps would you have also a response in relation to the inter-university cooperation, universities working together in the benefiting through the cooperation under HAQAA?
Yeah, okay, thank you, Deirdre, again. I will maybe address the benchmarking of PhD programs. I think we've done quite a lot in this area, where the ASG has been helping us to develop standards that will guide our PhD programs. And we have also benchmarked with international standards, for example, the level descriptors of our qualification framework that define what a PhD graduate should be able to do and know after they've graduated. It has also helped us to develop our PhD programs, and also we have used international experts to evaluate the PhD programs to assess whether they are being according to quality and all that. So that international perspective helps us to learn from other experiences and see how we can improve. And I can comfortably report that all our PhD programs, which have been submitted for assessment using international experts, have been successful. There were no issues which have been raised in terms of quality, and so I think it's a step ahead, because we have used international experts to evaluate our programs, and those which have been evaluated, they've passed the normal standards, that they've got the conditions to function as PhD programs. I think that one we are okay. Although there are still areas where we can still improve. And in terms of inter-university collaboration, I think it still remains a challenge in Mozambique to see how the HAQAA initiative can support this inter-university collaboration. But like Elizabeth was talking about, through training programs and all that, I think that will help. So that, for example, the AQRM, the AQRM is for quality improvement and all that, and it's like a benchmarking exercise, which if the universities use the AQRM, they can compare, they can have inter-collaboration between them to see where they are not doing well. They can learn from other universities. So I think there's still a lot of work to be done on improving the inter-university collaboration using the initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Abdul, does Senegal bring universities together in the framework of your processes in quality assurance and accreditation? Do you have working groups where you bring universities together, for instance, at HAQAA2?
Oui, merci.
Yes, thank you. Actually, like I said during my presentation briefly, not only do universities are stakeholders of the national scale in general, but they participate also, they have participated in the implementation of a platform for universities. This platform allows to the different individuals responsible for quality and for pedagogy at the level of the institutions, it allows them to at least once a year or during these meetings, they have a possibility to exchange good practices, difficulties, tools developed on one side and on the other, and this helps them solve different problems that may arise for the different institutions. And maybe institutions that are not in the same environment or do not have access to the same resources. And this is very fruitful, very enriching. We have established this platform 3 years ago, and this platform really helped us to share experiences among universities. The last meeting that we held through this platform was during COVID, and we engaged in discussions about the strategies developed by all the universities to assure pedagogical continuity. And this meeting was extremely interesting, and there were all questions were addressed. The legal environment for work in the context of the pandemic, the work done, the platform, all these important issues that were facing them at the time were addressed. And this really allowed us to virtually, yes, for all of our agencies to start with this process that started with pedagogical continuity, but ended up being about a pedagogical transformation. So our systems will definitely see a transformation if we first assure the continuity and we engage in these types of conversations. There is a need to create this exchange between the establishments and, of course, the agencies.
Thank you, Abdul. Felix, what would you say if you had to identify 2 main challenges for cooperation between Africa and the EU? Which would you say universities on two continents, what would you say they are? Felix, would I ask the question again?
Yes, please.
Yeah, if you had to identify two main challenges for cooperation between African and European universities, what would you say they are from your perspective?
Okay, so I would think to be along infrastructure. So that's one in terms of the finding common programs along which to align the collaboration. I also think currently it will be the other issue will also be in terms of financing, because if we are to say if the partnership is to be on an equitable or equal footing, we could see that the resources will be lacking on one aspect, and one side would need more help in terms of resources to be able to partner or collaborate effectively.
Thank you, Felix. Sorry. And then I'll just ask James if he has anything to add, and then I'll pass to Eleonora for the NGOs. James, what would
I mainly just wanted to add on where Felix has left, especially because this is a discussion on Europe-Africa relations on higher education, and it would be much better if at all some of the challenges are also highlighted and possibly responded to in future steps that are to be taken. And funding, which as he has mentioned, is quite important. He has also mentioned infrastructure, which also relates to the imbalances in capacities between our two regions, and which actually this cooperation arrangement should actually contribute to enhancing the capacities so that collaborations can be much a little bit more equal. Then there are the inequalities that have been there persistently. And then there are also cultural, we come from different cultural backgrounds, and which need to be understood and contextualized when we undertake these cooperations. And also, it has been noted through different researches that at times cooperation between the different regions leads to unintended consequences and risks for the higher education sectors, especially possibly in our parts of the world where not much strategies, policies, and regulatory frameworks to safeguard against these have been developed. And lastly is the perceptions to knowledge between the two regions, where knowledge from the West or Europe seem usually to be much more dominant than knowledge generation from regions such as the African continent. I think those will be my submissions at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's food for thought for myself and for Eleonora there.
Okay, thanks.
Eleonora.
Yes, I can reply on that, saying that through Indiki, we will have an envelope under the thematic components of 7 billion covering different thematic programs, and one will be for civil society organization. So the project that we can finance through this, strand on civil society organization can touch all different thematic areas, including higher education. So, and this is a different entry point. So just, the civil society organization has been applicant through this program, and other program also for civil society, not only at international global level, but also at local level through the funds directly managed by the EU delegation in the partner countries. Otherwise, from the perspective of the higher education projects, the question is very interesting, also well not in the sense that when we have also to see and review, the program, so to see what will be the role of civil society organization, NGOs in the project is also something that can be explored in the future. So how to better integrate the partnership with civil society organization. And in one point, maybe I see already some opportunities in sense that there will be important emphasis on youth, on the youth voice, youth participation, also in policies, in selected policies, for example, has education and higher education. So I see that possibly integration. So in the thematic of higher integration, higher education, and also youth participation in the policies. And of course, there will be a place for a civil society organization. I don't know if you want to complement there.
No, I just saw there was a question also in the questions and answers that I perhaps can give an preliminary answer to. The question of whether there'd be an Erasmus, a similar program to Erasmus, but across Africa. There I could just perhaps suggest that the colleagues, the participants refer to the Intra-Africa Academic Mobility Scheme, which is basically providing additional funding for mobilities between universities, between the different regions, African regions, and it has been going since 2015, and we're in the current sort of reflection, looking at budgets available to see whether it could possibly be continued or not. But you can see a whole series of partnerships that have been selected because the latest projects were selected quite recently. So in fact, these programs will be running for a certain time and are open to students to apply from the countries concerned. So I'd invite you to look that up. I think we have a quick. We have time for a sort of a second round between the panelists, and then after that I'll move to our respondents. Who I'll introduce then to you and ask for his perspective on the discussions today. Abdul, if you don't mind, can we touch upon the language question? So in terms of collaboration and harmonization, universities teaching programs in different regions of Africa, different languages, different historical backgrounds. Could you perhaps give some examples of how HAQAA2 addresses this question, whether how you feel that that the harmonization process is supporting understanding between the different systems? Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. First of all, HAQAA2 considers this diversity that originates from the historical background, the colonial past, and the linguistic past. This is something that HAQAA2 views as an opportunity for the investments of our systems in the framework of quality assurance. If we consider the different working groups that try to put together the tools and instruments and that strive to implement processes that will enable having this harmonization, we will realize that in actuality we can overcome this issue, even though sometimes difficulties and challenges may be encountered. But this is something that is truly inevitable if we want to go towards this integration. We have Gambia near us, which is Anglophone. It's an Anglophone country. They speak English there. And that has not impaired the development of cooperation with this country. We have worked together on a series of subjects, on a plethora of subjects, and these are subjects that we have moved ahead and we have implemented this. Something that has facilitated our task is the ASGs, because the ASGs not only give us these guidelines and the references, but as these ASGs are adaptable, this has now allowed us to go towards mutual understanding. I think that the need to have comparability between the different degrees and the need for academic and professional mobility has imposed us the need to go towards this harmonization, language barriers aside. So this example that I have mentioned is a clear example that harmonization is possible despite our differences.
Thank you very much. A question to all the panelists today. Well, we've heard it already and seen it in your presentations. Africa Higher Education collaborates with many organizations, international partners. We mentioned it before. I mean, our member states are also very active in across Africa. What would you say? What's unique or different, or what's particular about the cooperation with the EU when you're comparing it to cooperation with other international organizations or partners? Who's going to jump first? James.
Yeah, thank you so much once again. I think I may then in this situation fall back to a study that we undertook with the IAU, which looked at collaborations between Africa and other regions of the world. And in that study, respondents from Africa preferred collaborations with the EU. And this was tied to a number of factors, some of them historical, some related to the geographical proximity between Africa and Europe compared to other continents, but also due to the long-standing relations that Africa has had with Europe and the impacts of European higher education collaborations with Africa, especially in capacity building. Most of the pioneer African scholars actually studied in Europe and a few in North America. So this has been quite pivotal. And most of the old universities in Africa have a lot of tradition or history tying them to major universities in Europe. So that connection is still quite there. And the kind of cooperation that has been there in capacity building, in building institutions, and now going forward to even responding to the other contextual and challenges that universities need to address in their local environments, engaging with community, there has been a lot done through the different funding and research arrangements that has been between Africa and Europe. I think there has been a lot of no, I wouldn't call it commonality, but there is a bit of reciprocity and closer understanding. Even though the cultures are different, there is a much closer understanding these days between Europe as a region and Africa, such that undertaking such projects, undertaking such initiatives, it's much more easier than maybe it could have been before or than it is with other regions. So generally, Africa perceives Europe to be one of the closest regions in higher education cooperation.
If I talk about the elephant in the room, so to say, I mean, we've seen an increase of scholarships and mobilities with China in recent years between universities in Africa and China. It's focusing its scholarships mainly. I haven't seen quite as much capacity building. What have you to say about that?
Yeah, there is a lot of focus on scholarships, but not deeply embedded collaborations and networks amongst scholars, as we see with the European collaborations, because one distinguishing factor is the possibility of developing critical masses, an army of young new people. But the Chinese experience is good. It can give, it gives scholarships to the young Africans to find possibilities to study. But the European engagements are much more deeper, much more institutionalized, and much more long-term. And that's, I think, an advantage that we could much appreciate.
Felix, would you have anything to say on that also? On the benefits of, you know, cooperating with Africa, for instance. I mean, quite a lot of your peers are perhaps looking to China or to other continents for scholarships and such like. You know, what you're in a community. You're in the Erasmus Mundus community, which is a global community. But so to say, it's coming from a European funded program. So what are the dynamics that you're seeing, and you know, where is the relationship lasting, can you say?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll build on what James said, in that from our community, what we realize is that the qualifications and education in Europe is put on a very high pedestal, and it's given a high recognition on the continent. That's one of the things which makes young people value education and collaboration with Europe. Furthermore, as James mentioned, there are historical antecedents when it comes to education between Africa and Europe. So you find strong alumni associations, and also aside that, the kind of theories and concepts, often you realize that their source is coming from Europe. So people place a high premium on collaboration and education in Europe. Another issue which has become important is that amongst our groups, when we discuss these collaborations with external organizations, the increasing premium being put on improving quality is something which has become a hallmark of the collaboration, in that there's the intervention, there's a measure to improve quality. And as we met last time in Abidjan, another issue which has become important is skills development on the continent. That one, people can argue that, oh, probably because also a lot of young people might actually cross the border. If you see what happens along the ocean, probably Europe is afraid that young people might cross and come over. But then the issue on skills development, which has become increasingly important in the collaboration between EU and Africa, is something which has set the collaboration apart. And it's something which we must also give more attention to, especially in a time when we are facing a pandemic, because historically, after every crisis, is the young people who suffer more in terms of their career development, in that it becomes restricted. So that aspect of the collaboration has even become more urgent now that we are entering into the final decade of the SDGs and begin a post-COVID era. Thank you.
Thank you, Felix. Perhaps the last question at this stage before passing to our respondent. The Africa-EU summit is long overdue, in the sense there was the pandemic. So it should be, you know, we're working towards a summit in the upcoming months. What would you say should be brought to the attention of heads of state and that occasion? What is it at the utmost, and where do you think, how do you think we could contribute as a group, as stakeholders, as the, you know, higher education community? How could we contribute to the summit?
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead. It's free for all.
Okay, so thank you very much. One of the issues which we've observed has become very increasingly a problem is that many young people have had their education in this period where we've had a pandemic. Although the pandemic is now easing, a lot of young people, especially girls, are not returning back to the classroom. And that's a big problem for us on the continent, because then the inequality in education worsens, and providing lifelong equity education is an integral aspects of the Agenda 2063, as well as in the SDGs. So this is one big issue. The other issue is education for sustainable development. As I mentioned earlier, now the content of education is being reimagined so that it should make people more attuned to the environment and more responsible in terms of sustainability issues, people being aware of climate change and of their role as responsible members of the global community. Then finally, I'll talk about skills development and opportunities for young people's careers, because as I mentioned earlier, after every disaster, it is the young people whose careers are and livelihoods are often truncated, and they don't have the resources to fall back. In fact, a study indicated that after the 2008 financial crisis, it took some young people took more than 6 years to be able to now gain normalcy in their lives. So this is very important issues, especially as Africa has one of the youngest populations in the world. This is something that we should really address in the coming years. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And colleagues, what do you think we should highlight? What do you think we should highlight at the summit? When we think about HAQAA or the ACQF, the initiatives, the harmonization initiatives, where do you think our leverage is? You know, in the previous phases, we organized events, sort of bringing the work that we're doing under the spotlight, so to say. What do you think is the main message that we could put to the summit this time?
Yeah, can I go? Yes. Once again, thank you. I think I'm aware that we are all aware that the European Union is doing quite a lot for Africa. But our appeal is that if it can be even more, if they can provide even more support, because I'm talking about, for example, in Mozambique, where if you support a capacity development, maybe 5 teachers in Mozambique, where we have got more than 50 universities, and I say we still need more capacity development. So I think if you can double the effort, we know we are doing quite a lot, but for us to reach our people in Chikwalakwala, that remote part, I'm talking about to make more focus on digital skills, especially during this pandemic. How can you make sure that digital skills are the focus of the summit? How can we improve the digital skills of the citizens so that they can be able to communicate, they can be able to do their work using technology during this pandemic? I think that would be a way forward in my view, because like as I've said, we are doing quite a lot, but if we have more, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to pass to our respondent, if you don't mind. I'd like to thank all of you, all our panelists. For
can I say something, please?
Go on, Felix, go on.
Yeah, and so I just wanted to add to what James and Jeffy have said, that in essence, education is the vehicle for building back better. So that's the clarion call as we enter the final decade of the SDGs.
We should cry that loud and clear for the summit. Then the message received. Thank you. Thank you very much for your very relevant and highlighted contributions. We'll close up after, but I wanted to pass the floor now to our respondent today, who is Nico Joost, who was the director of the Office for International Education at Nelson Mandela University, now collaborating with SALUA, the Southern African Regional University Association, and he's also the senior director of the Center for Higher Education Internationalization, Afrique. Nico, I pass the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, colleagues, and it was good to listen to all of you. some of you are old friends, and the voices were calming to listen to. What is interesting is that it is clear that there is continental-wide activities funded by the EU, but also by the AU, by the African Union, on quality assurance and on addressing some of those basic issues that would underline integration within the African continent. Now, the value of these activities is that it not only builds the capacity, but it actually drives cooperation amongst the different regional and professional groupings within the African environment. It is interesting listening to all, and my good friend James would not mind me saying this, but it's always been my I've always advocated that what the East Africans are doing, we should actually look more carefully at. They not only, it's not only a nice to have, and in many cases, and let's look at I look at SADC for that matter. SADC is, you can join or not join. It is not statutory that people participate. Of course, within the Sarua and the SADC environment, there's a lot of collaboration people want to, but the East Africans went one step further, and they've actually made it much more formal. And if we look at the results, it's very interesting from an outsider looking in, and I've worked a lot with the East African grouping of universities, that they actually have achieved quite substantially. I'm not saying the others haven't, but so the bottom line is the projects have actually enhanced collaboration, and we must look at that and see how we can build on the current projects to take us to a next level of collaboration. I don't want us to say we must do it differently. I think we must find complementary vehicles that would, and it was interesting for me, the Senegalese example of working with the two languages, because language is an issue. I don't say it's an obstacle, it's an issue. We must just make sure that we recognize it, that we constantly focus on it, that we, although Africa is the common denominator, we must know that we're different. As Europe is different, Africa is different. And therefore, if I look at the projects and how the projects have slowly start to find their feet within the different communities, the differences are there, but we have actually crossed the differences in many cases to take the project forward. And I want to say to you that within SADC, and that's for Sarua, it's always been a difficult environment to manage in, because unlike you, James, who have largely the benefit of having English as a common language, although the African languages are dominant. But in the Southern African environment, we have Portuguese, French, and English, and therefore we have to mitigate between that. And we need to be cognizant of that, so that we don't leave Jeffrey and his colleagues out of the conversations when we have our conferences, for instance. Now, that's the challenge throughout the region. And I think the common denominator that brings the region together to collaborate is a neutral space. And the neutral space in this case is the EU funding that's provided. I've worked with many EU projects, and some more successful than others, but I must say that in most cases, the EU colleagues have always been very cognizant of the fact that there should be equal partnerships. And my colleagues haven't said that, but I can say that in most cases, my experience was that the European colleagues drive to bring home that it's an equal partnership. What I do want, which we haven't spoken, and Felix, I do think what we mustn't all just focus on the intra-Africa and Africa out, the mobility out of Africa. I think what I would like to see more, and I want to say that we were privileged when I drove internationalization at my university, about 60% of all the incoming study abroad students were European students. We focused on that. And the value of that in capacity building. When Jeffrey spoke about capacity building, I agree. But I want to see PhD students in the PhD labs in Africa from Europe, and not only the African students in European labs, because the capacity building goes both ways. And I just want to conclude of something that we haven't said during the conversation, and that is that I think that we as the African participants must also recognize the South-South collaboration. You have funded in some cases South-South-North collaboration, and I think we mustn't forget that we must just look at a two-way street, but it would bring benefits if we also look at South-South-North collaboration. And Obriel, as far as I'm concerned, is the ideal space where we can actually build on the South-South-North collaboration. And perhaps just in conclusion, since you've given me the time, I need to advertise. The Sarua conference, which is the 20th and 21st of April, the focus of the conference is actually on regional collaboration post-COVID. Because one thing that I think the elephant in the room, except the Chinese that you were talking about, Deirdre, the elephant in the room is what will happen post-COVID? And Jeffrey was speaking about digital capacity building. Of the papers that were submitted now, there's a whole session on digital transformation within the African environment. And if we look at how the African universities have jumped to actually already implement, in some cases, online learning and so forth, it's amazing what has happened. And perhaps we should learn from ourselves on how we innovated and actually export some of that to other spaces. So what I want to say to all my colleagues, we will launch the registration for the conference in the next week. Have a look at it. It's a virtual conference, of course, but some of the topics that we've discussed today are actually on that agenda also. Thank you, Deirdre.
Thank you, Nico. Thank you very much for rounding up there. And if you allow me, I'm going to do a bit of publicity. Also is to say, actually, Felix, you can probably announce it, is that the African Students and Alumni Association will be doing their first continental workshop in April. So we'll be sending you the link for that. So please join. It's virtual, so I mean, there's no problem on participation. And also that we hope to be able to give news on Erasmus as soon as possible. So for the coming period, we're hoping, at least in the first call, you know, Nico, possibly already, that some of the funding will be available in any case for outgoing mobility from Europe towards other partner countries across the world. So that will be positive. And I think we should really make the most of this momentum. And in particular, I'd like to build on the remarks that were said during the seminar. The strength of our EU-Africa collaboration in higher education is capacity building. It's trust. I think we have gained a sufficient, a good level of trust in each other to be able to see where the priorities are. This morning I was in another a workshop in a high-level policy dialogue in science, technology and innovation. So there again, health challenges, COVID, digital, etc. Everything, the areas I think where support is required are very visible. Felix, your urgent request, at least attention to be put on young girls after COVID, getting back into the system. I think we've got plenty of areas where we need to follow up on in the coming years, and we'll be coming back to you to ask for your ideas on how we can showcase our collaboration together in the run-up to the summit. So I think that's all. It's been an absolute pleasure getting your insights from the different perspectives. I'd like to thank the colleagues in Obriel who gave us a brilliant brief to be able to, one, keep the time and two, really have a pleasant and good thorough conversation on why we're collaborating together. And I think that was beneficial for all. I hope the participants have learnt about our collaboration, and those who already had heard about us, about this work together, have learnt more. And I will pass back the floor to Elizabeth and Ramon to close our debates. But thank you very much, and please all keep safe, and we'll see each other soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Deirdre, for your excellent sharing, and also for all the support and also the guidance you've provided throughout, gosh, almost a decade now in Africa-EU collaboration in the higher education sector. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to our interpreters. We appreciate it. We have a challenge in speaking to each other, not just within the African continent and between Africa and Europe, but also more globally. And so we're really committed to overcoming that challenge and making these types of events as linguistically friendly as possible. I would just like to say, for those of you who asked the question, this webinar will be made available as a recording afterwards if you would like to further disseminate that. You will be hearing from us in terms of follow-up. We will be launching other HAQAA webinars this year, sometimes on more specific issues. Obviously, this was a bit of an umbrella webinar where we explored a lot of different initiatives and issues. We wanted to give you an entry point, but we will have other events where we focus on more specific issues. For those of you interested in the North, South, South and South, South, North collaboration more generally, we have other events on offer under the Obriel Global in Focus platform, the platform by which you registered for this event. So please do check that out. And finally, for those of you who want more details specifically on the HAQAA initiative, please do visit our website. We will circulate that, where you'll see all the detailed information on the different elements of the program, the partners participating in that, upcoming activities, upcoming webinars, etc. That's all from me. Thank you to everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon, evening, morning, if you're joining us from Latin America, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you, everyone.